Well, normally I'm used to saying a special Lord's Day welcome to everyone upon this stage, but today is Saturday and it's a special event. And so a blessed Saturday morning to you all. Today we have a very special person coming to speak on her book and about her life. Today, we're very thankful to have you all out here this morning. To those also tuning into the live stream, it's a wonder and a privilege to be able to do this. I'm Reverend Pete Vantoff. I'm the pastor here at our little church, and it is my great pleasure, firstly, to introduce Jody Roque to you, who will bring an introduction to our main speaker, Simonetta Carr.
Okay. Well, finally the day is here when I get to introduce you to my friend, Simonetta Carr. I thought this day was never going to come after having to cancel due to COVID and having been encouraged by a fellow believer to try to have this important talk about mental illness in the church. I gathered together some of the busiest, hardworking people I know to organize this day, and with many thanks to them, here we are. I met Simonetta through a mutual friend. She knew we both lost sons because of schizophrenia, and she suggested I write to her. Since I was 2 years along in the grieving process, I thought I could encourage her. As is often the case, when we reach out to someone, we receive much more than we give. There is a way that people who have lost children connect with each other. They understand each other's broken hearts in a way that others don't see. So Simonetta, living in California, and me living here, we continued to email. I was a tad intimidated at first. After all, Simonetta is an author of several books, but she never sent anything back corrected. So after a while, I grew more confident and just wrote, usually long, straight from the heart emails. Even if they were a bit of a grammar nightmare, she understood me. While we continued to correspond, Simonetta started to write Broken Pieces and The God Who Mends Them. I was pretty sure as a mother and as a Christian, she was putting on paper answers to painful questions that I had and information that would be valuable to others. I knew it was written straight from her heart. So when Broken Pieces was published, I invited a travel-savvy, faithful friend to come with me to California. I was able to give Simonetta the hug that I couldn't give her over email, and we were able to bring home our own autographed copies of Broken Pieces and The God Who Mends Them, as well as some fabulous memories. Simonetta was born in Italy, makes the best lasagna, I know, I had it, has lived and worked in different cultures, first as an elementary school teacher, then as a homeschooling mother to 8 children, 7 boys, 1 girl. Can you imagine having 7 boys and finally a girl? Taught Sunday school and catechism for many years. She is the author of a number of books, including the award-winning series Christian Biographies for Young Readers. I say young and old readers because they are a great way to learn church history for people like me who like it simple. She has contributed to newspapers and magazines around the world, has translated the works of several authors from English into Italian and vice versa. She has been speaking in several different places in the US. The weekend last, she was in Portland, Oregon, not Maine, speaking on a different book and cannot stay as long as I would have liked to have her here because she teaches Italian to adults and has to get back to her class. She lives in San Diego with her husband, where she attends Christ United Reformed Church. Hearing this bio, one would expect someone too busy to have time for visitors from Canada. But Simonetta was warm, welcoming, and so very humble. It is truly a blessing to call her my friend. And soon I am sure that you will feel like she is your friend as well. We hope you feel very welcome here, Simonetta.
You'd be so kind as to just sit for a moment. I forgot to do a whole bunch of stuff. This is called housekeeping. First of all, for those of you who aren't aware, the bathrooms are through the lunchroom and in the back corner over there. Secondly, about our free will offering today, everyone can see a donations box sitting right there. We're not going to pass anything out, but if you're so compelled to help us take care of our expenses today, the donations box is right there. Also, I've been asked to speak just a little bit about the resources here. You can see that we've got a bunch of Simonetta's book, Broken Pieces, here. We're going to sell those for $20 a book, and if Simonetta would be so kind, if you ask her really nice, she might even sign it for you. I didn't ask you, but your smile on your face seems like I can offer that. We also had, for anyone who registered before the 13th, a little draw for one of the books, and we took that draw, and I'm wondering if Lainey Welter is here. Well, she won a book. So at some point today, if you would be so kind as take one of the books, and then if you would like for Simonetta to sign it, then she won the lottery. So outside of that, the resources in and of themselves, there's one particular piece of paper here, and this is all about mental health and well-being for Brockville and area. There's everything you could possibly need for a reference on this piece of paper here. But feel free to take anything you need here. Again, the books, these books here, these are other Simonetta Carr books, wonderfully done. What a gift. These are the church's library books, so feel free to take a look and see what they're all about, but just don't take them home with you. That would be wonderful. Anything else, Anne, that I could? Oh, there's a Silver Ribbon campaign here. All the information that you need is there. There's all kinds of, we're all here to lean upon one another, brothers and sisters, and dwell upon the fact that there's a lot of sin in the world and a lot of corruption, and we need a lot of help. And there's so many good resources here. I encourage you to take a sample of each and review them. Ask questions, anything that you do need. Don't hesitate to talk to any one of us. So let's see. Book winner, free will offering, bathrooms. I think we're good. Why don't we sing? Would that be okay if we could sing yet? We'll begin singing in our bulletins with Be Thou My Vision. That's if your Trinity Psalters, the songbooks in your pews, number 446, and the words will be, okay, and the words will be up on the wall there as soon as we get going here.
Can you hear me, everybody? Yeah, good. I was told I can sit, because I've been speaking for a long time, I think. I don't know, at least they scheduled me to speak for a long time. So if I sit, are you okay? You can see me and everything? Good, good. Okay. Okay, well, thank you for being here. I want to thank, you say I can call you Pete, because I'm going to say your last name wrong. So. Okay, okay. Yeah, and Jody and everybody else who organized, Sylvia and Anne. And Jody has been so persistent. I was supposed to come before COVID, and then COVID happened, and she didn't give up. And she just kept asking me to come. And she's been fantastic in setting everything up and putting me in a great hotel and everything. So I want to thank everybody, but I also want to thank you for being here, because it's very encouraging that you're here to talk about something that might not be the most inspiring thing to hear on a Saturday, but I hope it will be inspiring at the end. The subject is not too happy. We're talking about something that concerns many of us, but I think overall we'll find that it can be inspiring, so hopefully. So my accent, just in case, I better tell you from the start, I'm Italian. Well, she said I'm Italian, but I never lost my accent. So in case I don't want you to wonder the whole time. Sometimes I've been speaking and I see people turning to each other like, what did she say? Because sometimes the pronunciation, if I put the stress on the wrong syllable, it sounds strange. I hope you can figure it out. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my book and then about mental illness in general. The way that we organized it, I'll tell you a little about my book. I'll tell you a little about mental illness in general and schizophrenia specifically. And then I think we have a break, and then I'll talk about lessons that I learned, and we have a break, and then how the church can help. And I saw that they scheduled me to talk for an hour and 15 minutes the first time, but then Jody told me it's okay if I stop sooner, so you can have a longer break, I think. Okay, the book. So the book is called Broken Pieces and the God Who Mends Them. So the title was inspired by a song, a poem that my son wrote, and then later was turned into a song. So I'll tell you a little about how the title came about, and then I think we're going to see a video with the song, I keep saying song, with the poem that he wrote turned into a song. And you'll also see pictures of my son. Okay, so I had 8 children, like Jody was saying. Jonathan was the 5th of 8, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, I think it was 2012, but he had some signs earlier. And we saw that he went to college, and I'm Italian, I don't want my kids to live home. So I think, in Italy actually kids don't travel that much for college. Usually they tend to stay where they live and they stay with their mom. It's like a bit of a tradition. They stay home much longer than here. Here you want to send them out. But in his case, we didn't know he was gone. We only saw him once in a while. He was always a little scatterbrained from from the start. He probably took that after me, even would forget things. Like the absent-minded professor, because he was actually very smart, especially in math. And when he went to college, whenever he came back, that seemed to be worse. And first we said, okay, just he has more on his mind. But then we realized that there was more to it. He just didn't seem the same person anymore. But we didn't really realize until he actually came home from college, he didn't do well. And we were very surprised because he was very smart. So he didn't do well, and I don't remember if he was, I don't remember all the details, but they're there. Don't remember if he was actually asked to leave or he wanted to leave. Something happened, but he left college. And then I realized that there was really something seriously wrong. And the book starts with an episode where he came to me and he said, "Mom, is this a game?" And at first I said, "Do you want to play a game?" I didn't understand what he meant. And he said, "No, is this a game?" I said, "You mean life?" He said, "Yes." And I didn't know what to say. I tried some theological explanations of how life can seem like a game, or I don't know. I tried to come up with something, but then I called my husband and I said, "There's something really wrong." So he came back and we talked. He was at work and he came home and we tried to talk to Jonathan, and we really realized that there was something going on, that he had lost touch with reality. And he was a lot more emotional too. He would cry for nothing. So between that and being absent-minded, there was a lot that just told us that there was some problem. Of course, he didn't want to go to see anybody, but we started with a regular doctor, but he suggested to go to a psychiatrist, and then took it from there. But when he went to the psychiatrist said it's schizophrenia, and I knew nothing about it. And that's one reason why I'm here talking, and I go to different places talking, because which parent gets enough education about these things? You know, you're told about many things, you know, how to send your son to college, how to, I don't know, there's a lot of how-tos out there, but rarely anybody says, you know, that he could develop a mental illness. There is always that possibility during the late teenage years. Usually it's late teenage or early 20s. That there is that possibility. You don't want to be scared, but it's good to know because you can be prepared. And another thing is, my cousin in Italy had schizophrenia, and I didn't know. Nobody told me. I knew that he had some problems for a while. He was in the hospital. Nobody said why, because you know these things you don't talk about. And I only found out after, because when my son was diagnosed, I talked to my sister, and she said, "Oh yeah, like cousin Enzo." And I said, "Okay, now you're telling me." So all these things, I would have been more prepared. I wish I could have been more prepared. And the book hopefully can prepare people a little. Hopefully it will never happen to you, hopefully. But it might happen to a friend, you know, it's good to be aware of these things. And even when he was diagnosed, they just gave me a piece of paper that said schizophrenia, a few things about it, and some support groups that I could call. But when I called them, I had to be on a waiting list, so basically I didn't know what to do. And my son didn't want to see a therapist, and it was kind of difficult. And also, at first, I didn't even understand. I thought, you know, you take these pills and it'll be okay, you know. like take your 2 aspirins and call in the morning, right? And he was not like that. So I was very confused. And one thing I did initially that I would say don't do is just buy some books or go to the library, I got some books about schizophrenia, and I thought, okay, if I do exactly this, everything's going to work out. And it didn't work out. It just not. I remember even once my son was having a major crisis, and I had the book there, and I was following the instructions. But one thing I learned is that you cannot just take a book and do what it says. Please do not do that with my book. Don't do that with my book, because I shared my experience, but not to tell you what to do, absolutely. If anything, to tell you what not to do. And then I have some, the first part is just a story, my story. And I wrote the story soon after my son died. It was a friend of mine that suggested it, and it was good writing it because, first of all, everything was still fresh in my mind, and then my mind was already going back and rehearsing everything, because I was thinking, what did I do wrong? You know, what happened? It was so shocking when he died. So my mind kept going back, and I said, well, if my mind goes back, might as well write it down. And also, I talk a lot, and my husband doesn't. So he couldn't have written this book, but I talk to everybody. When I'm in a crisis, I just send messages and emails to everybody. What do I do? Some people here know that. And so I had all those emails, and I tried to do it in chronological order, thanks to technology that you can do that, you know, research all the emails in chronological order, emails, messages, and I put them all together. And so, some people say, how could you remember all that? But that's how. I just had all those emails and messages and put them all together. And overall, it was good for me too, because after I did it, I just said, you know, I really did everything I could and what I thought was right. And probably I made a ton of mistakes, but a good thing is my son was always very forgiving, so I'm glad about that. So that's how the first part came about. The second part, it's about lessons I learned, which we will talk about in the second part of this speech. And there's lots of lessons, but today I'll just focus on a couple. And for the second part, I mean, the last thing I wanted to do after writing all the mistakes I made and writing about my son dying, the last thing I wanted to do is, please do this now. No, absolutely not. So I put some lessons I learned, and then I interviewed different people. So Jody had a great part in it, and other mothers, and then I interviewed people with schizophrenia, and pastors, and psychiatrists, and therapists, and a bit everybody. I just reached out to a lot of people, and I said, what do you think about this? And put the second part together, so it's not just me. It's compilation of advice from different people. So that's basically what you can expect from the book. Now, the title, back to the title. When my son died, my world fell apart. I think it's mostly because for 2 years I had been taking care of him. That was my main thing in life at that time, because he was so sick that I had to devote a lot of time to him, and just my thoughts, what do I do? How do I act? And you read the book, and there was not a dull moment. Every time we thought things were getting better, something would happen. And so all of a sudden, I said, what do I do now? It was almost like an identity crisis, Who am I? What am I doing? And I had to I'll talk later about how I had to just find again my vocation in Christ. But I was so distraught and everything that I was looking for any kind of comfort. And when my son died in January, and then his birthday was in February, when his birthday came about, lots of people on Facebook said something, and they knew, that he had died, but they still said something on his page. And we were not friends on Facebook. This is a funny thing, because I don't befriend my kids on Facebook or things like that unless they want me to, because I don't want to intrude. And with them, I didn't. But a funny thing is that once he used my computer, and so I could have done it. And then for a while, I was teasing him. I said, if you make me upset, I'm gonna click here, and I become your friend. But anyway, we were. I asked another son of mine to let me in his Facebook page, and there were lots of people saying all kinds of stuff. But as I was scrolling down, I saw a poem, and he was writing lots of poems, and you see really deep poems, and usually very short and very meaningful, some very confused, but some very meaningful, so I had to sort. But when I was scrolling down, I saw a poem, and it was about Christ, and it was a prayer, and I was surprised. And I looked at it, and I almost couldn't believe it. I think mothers, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes mothers can really be bad in this respect, because we want to see fruit in our kids more than we should, because like my pastor often says, if you have an apple tree and there's one apple, it's an apple tree. It has fruit. You don't have to see it full of apples. But sometimes mothers want double confirmation. So at first I said, did he really write it? And I even Googled it to see if somebody else wrote it, and no, it was him. And I said, well, this is God's gift to me on my son's birthday, because it was so comforting to see that the poem just was a prayer basically to Jesus, and he showed that he had faith. And like I said, I had the temptation of wanting more fruit before, but when I saw that, I said, yeah, he was a believer, and I probably shouldn't even have doubted it. He was always a member in the church, in good standing. He never. He had one period when he had a bit of an issue, but most of the time he was in good standing, and he did have faith. Anyhow, long explanation, but now you can see the actual. You can see my son and hear the poem in song, because then I sent this poem to a friend of mine that writes beautiful songs, and I said, can you turn it into a song? And he did. So we can hear it now. I wish the person who had made the video had ended on a happier picture, because it showed the decline, my son's decline. The last few pictures were taken when he was really sick, but it's okay. Yeah. The first time I showed this video, I was telling Jody, it was in a church, and it was very dark, and then I tried not to cry, and then after they turned the light on, and everybody in the pews were crying, and I said, don't do this to me, because it's heartbreaking, and it's also, it was hard writing the book. I remember talking to Jody about that and how tough it was, but I knew it was needed, so we did. Anyway, yeah, one thing I wanted to say before I talk a little bit more about schizophrenia in general. I just wanted to let you know I'm not a professional, so I speak from a mother's experience, what I learned, but don't take anything I say as gold when it comes to scientific descriptions, medical descriptions, and also when you're asking questions, I can't give you any answers about medications or anything like that. I think there might be somebody here who's more qualified than I am. Okay, so about schizophrenia in general, most people tell me that I should explain a little, because a lot of people don't know anything about it. So if you hear the word schizophrenia, many people think it's a split personality, and it's not. I have no idea how that started, and I wish somebody could change the vocabulary, the dictionary. We have changed so many words nowadays. We really should change that, because some people even say, oh, this is schizophrenic, when they mean, something has two different personalities or different things. But no, it's not like that at all. So it's not a split personality disorder, and it does not necessarily bring violence. A lot of people think, oh, schizophrenia, there's going to be violence. No, my son was the meekest you would ever meet. But doctors, when they talk about schizophrenia, they talk about positive and negative symptoms. Now, the positive symptoms have nothing positive about it. They just mean that they're outgoing. No, that's not the word, but they are obvious, I guess. So that would be psychosis, which includes hallucinations, and most. Sorry, I need some water. I don't know how I'm going to do 3 hours here. I need to get you guys to say something. Okay. So mostly is hearing voices, those kind of hallucinations. But sometimes can be visual too. And then often it's accompanied by paranoia. Not always, but quite often. It was that was the case for my son. And I had another experience with another member of my family, but I'm not gonna, this one I'm not gonna say who and anything, because he's still around and he would not appreciate it. But, so I can also compare, and then I have several friends who have schizophrenia, and most of them tell me that they have paranoia. Paranoia came with it. So, like, for example, fear of being followed, fear of being targets of killers. That you see a car and you're convinced that this car is after you, and one person that I know that kept calling the police because he kept saying that he saw the police following him and he didn't stop. So he said, "Oh, the police was following me. I didn't stop," and the police didn't know anything. So okay, don't do it again. I mean, I was like, they didn't even know what he was talking about. Some people are afraid that people are trying to poison them, so they refuse to eat, and that's one thing that they feared with my son. Or medications. For a while, my son thought we were giving him poison when we said take the medication. Some think that song lyrics or street signs have a special message for them. They kind of interpret words that they hear. So this is just to give you a general picture, but if you go online, you can find all the positive symptoms. Negative symptoms are the ones that you don't see so obviously, so they will include inability to express emotions, withdrawal from others, and lack of care of themselves and their surroundings. So they might have all of them, some of these. And it usually shows up in the late teens. And yeah, so my son had almost all of these symptoms. Sometimes anger is a common initial response because it's not necessarily linked to the illness, but sometimes it's a response because they don't know how to cope with what's happening to them, and they just explode sometimes. Okay, so why learn about mental illness? Okay, so the main reason why learning about mental illness is because it's all around us. So many people say they don't have time to learn about it. I heard that, which I don't know if it's hard for me now, because now I said everybody should learn about it. I don't know if I would have said the same before, but it's dangerous if you don't learn about it for different reasons. First, you never know when it may happen to you or someone close to you, and if it happens, it's going to be sudden, most likely, and you don't know, you don't have time to prepare at that point. So it's good to know. Also, like for example, when my son first, when he was diagnosed, and when I started to talk about it in church, one time he was hospitalized, so I asked the church to pray. I found out all of a sudden so many people came up to me and said, "Oh, my mother had schizophrenia, my cousin, or if it's not schizophrenia, maybe bipolar." And I said, "Oh, how come I never heard all this?" So many times we don't know what goes on in the lives of people around us, and they may be going through a similar experience in their family or with friends, and it's just good to know, to be aware of these things. And then the other reason is because ignorance affects our reactions. So, like sometimes we say if you don't catechize your children, the world will. And it's almost the same. If you don't learn about mental illness, you learn from the wrong sources sometimes, because if you don't learn about it, then you read the newspapers or watch the news on TV, and usually it's always when something happens and they tell you, "Oh, this person had a mental illness," and you get that picture of mental illness, that, okay, a person has mental illness, they're going to do a mass shooting, which is not true in every case. So you need to be aware so you don't have that picture in your mind, which is, it's like a misconception. And then the other dangerous go to the opposite extreme of seeing mental illness as something just light and temporary. Like, I remember in the beginning I was talking, when my son was diagnosed, I was talking to some young people in my church, and one of them said, oh, we all hear voices. It's completely different. Maybe it's true, I don't know, that it might happen that you hear a voice, especially like you young people who are sitting there. I don't want to scare you if you hear a voice. Doesn't mean you have schizophrenia. But it's different. When you have schizophrenia, you know, it's completely different. You hear these voices all the time, and you can't tell what's true or not true. I hear voices sometimes if I didn't before, I do now. If I work on something in Italian, then I actually hear people speak in Italian. It never happened before. But I'm completely aware that it's my mind, because I'm writing something in Italian, and then I hear the voice of somebody speaking Italian. They're probably trying to help me to write. But it's not a voice, it's my mind working. So that can happen. That's not schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is you hear voices you don't know, you don't understand what is real or not real. My son once said that he heard voices and he didn't know. If I spoke to him, he didn't know which one was speaking. If this person was speaking to him or the voice that he was hearing was me. So that's really confusing. It's really, really bad. And you can imagine people having to sort out all this. It's just amazing. Okay, one more reason to learn about schizophrenia is that we don't have enough structures for people who have a serious mental illness. So many people end up in the streets, and you know that. I don't know here, but maybe here it's different. But in San Diego, where I live, you see people everywhere on the streets, and you see them talking to themselves, and they think they're talking to someone. And, you know, you just see everywhere. Because there's not enough structures. So that's a reason, in the sense that if you are in any capacity of voting for something to change, or if you're even involved in the government in any way, to be able to keep this in mind. I remember once I tried to get somebody that I know who is involved in government to do something, and he said, well, it's up to the people. If people are not, this is not an issue that people are concerned about. So, and then it was like, they have to be concerned about it. There are people out there, they're, you know, human beings, and just because they don't bother you, I guess, doesn't mean you don't need to be concerned. Anyway, I'm getting on a high horse. Is that how you say it in English? Sometimes I'm bad with the English expressions. Anyway, what else? Now, some hindrances. Why people don't want to learn about mental illness. So one is a cultural association of mental illness with weakness, and weakness with shame. So some people, they think, I have a mental illness, my mind is not working properly, that's bad, I'm weak, and it's a shameful thing, and I'm not going to tell anybody. So that's that. Or in a family, you know, you have the example of my cousin. Your cousin goes to hospital because he has schizophrenia. That's not something you want to tell. You don't want to put it on Facebook. And I'm not saying do that, no. But at least people should be free to talk to friends and a pastor and just speak out, and especially not think that it's a sign of weakness or, something that brings shame, because it's not something you can do about it. So, what else? Some people deny that mental illness is an illness, and they say there's no pathology. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but I've heard it, and so many people, they just say, no, it's not an illness. So this is kind of debatable, and I actually spoke to a professor who is an author of academic texts on this subject. He was my student. I taught him Italian. So he explained that a lot depends on what we mean by pathology. So if we mean that a part of the body, in this case the brain, doesn't function well, then not all the conditions we define as mental illness are pathological, because not all can be detected in a brain scan, even though schizophrenia can sometimes, and not all are due to a chemical imbalance. And then also, like I was saying, you can have hallucination, loss of touch with reality that is only temporary, and that's not classified as an illness. So in that case, it's true. But when one of these conditions brings the inability to function in a person's life, then this professor I was talking to said that you can call it pathological, because then you have to do something about it. You have to use some sort of medication. And in fact, like, mental disorders were already considered diseases in Greek and Byzantine medical textbooks. And Chrysostom, anybody knows Chrysostom? John Chrysostom. It's a church father from the 4th century. He gave an example of physicians, the compassion of physicians. He was talking about physicians who were taking care of people with mental illness. I forgot how he called it. And these people were violent with the doctors. And he spoke of doctors that were kicked and abused by these patients, and in spite of that, they were still helping the patients. So that was going on way back then, and he talked about it as an illness. So, but if you don't like the word illness, that's okay too. The thing is, it's important to know that it's not something that you can just brush away, and it's not something that a person can overcome just by willpower or prayer or anything like that. So normally, I'm a minimalist when it comes to medications. Actually, I have been sick the last couple of days in my stomach. I had to take a small pill for nausea, and I waited till the very last moment. I hate to take any medication. But I've seen minds improve when they take medications for mental illness. So what do? You know, if there's a person that thinks that this church is going to collapse they hear a voice that everything is going to collapse, and they run out, and they can't live a full life because they keep hearing voices that tell them things that are not there, and they just can't function properly. And then you see them taking a medication and everything goes away. What do you do in that case, Do you say, no, don't take it? I'm all for the least dosage possible, and if it can be for just a short period of time and decrease it later, I'm all for it. But I think there's a time when medication has to be taken. So, okay, so that for illness, for the word illness. And maybe you don't want to call it illness, and you can call it mental disorder, or I wish there was a better word, discomfort. But discomfort is not, it's temporary usually. Anyway, and then the other thing, some people don't think, this is related to Christians, some Christians think that you shouldn't call it mental illness, because I heard this too. Some people say that the mind is not part of the body, is part of the soul. And they say because when you die, your soul goes on to live, and you're still able to think. I don't know how they know though. Anyway, so your mind keeps working even after, and that's like a little bit. It's more. It's closer to Plato or Descartes, if you know anything about philosophy. I know very little, but enough to know this. You know, Descartes was the one that. I was about to do a joke. He put Descartes before the horse. The one who, among other things, is the one that said, you know, I think, therefore I am. Yeah? And he also made it a very strong distinction. He was not the first one, but between soul and body, or mind and body. And, but that's not the traditional Christian view. The traditional Christian view is that mind and or soul and body work together. So whether the mind belongs to the body or to the soul or to both, or it's not really important, because everything works together in harmony. So, and then when we die, yes, we don't have a body for a while, but then we will. So, to me, this is not really important. We're just talking about words, you know, but we know that the mind is affected, and that should not be, the fact that it's, that you don't know if it's part of the body or the soul, it's not, it should not be a reason not to consider it an illness or something that needs to be treated when necessary. And then the other thing is that many times there are mental illness. We have a big, mental illness is a big umbrella. We put many things under. So sometimes you may have a light depression or light anxiety or something like that. And sometimes those are considered mental illnesses. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be, but what I'm saying is that you need to differentiate things. There could be a person that has just a mild anxiety and doesn't need any medication, and he just needs to find different things, different approach in life, or, you know, there's so many different cases. And like I said, I'm not a doctor, and not even going to try to be. But then there are cases where medication is necessary. So we can't just put everything in one basket and say, because this person had anxiety and it went away without medication, then you should be able to. We just can't do that. Okay. And then for Christians, why do we even have mental illness? And I mean, the simple reason is because of sin, right? But not because of a person's sin, because of the sinful nature. When sin came into the world, we started to have all these problems. So it's not because of one person's sin. Jesus makes that very clear in the scriptures. But it's the sinful condition that causes all these things, just like you have cancer or you have stomach troubles, in my case, or whatever you get. It's all part of, you know, the curse, I guess, the fallen nature. But also we know that it's all temporary in the sense that it doesn't last in the next life. So it's something that we have to deal with in this life. But mental illness is very baffling, very confusing. There are other things that, at least right now, the science and medicine have been able to figure out. You know, you have cancer, it's most of the time they know what to do with it. There are other things that medicine knows what to do. Mental illness, they're still not where they should be, I guess, in the research. They're still working things out. They're doing different researches, whether it's genetic or you know, what causes it and how to treat it. There's lots of, I know there's people here who can give you a better description of this. But what I really wanted to say, more than tell you anything about the causes or anything, is that it is confusing. It's something that we don't understand. One thing I wrote there and that I realized is, like, you think about the people way back when they saw a thunderstorm. Maybe they couldn't really explain where the lightning came from or something, right? So we are at that point with the mental illness, and it keeps us humble, I think. It keeps us dependent on God, because medicine has made so much progress, and we have figured out so many things, science in general, but we have not figured out mental illness. We don't know what goes on in the mind, and there are so many different cases, and they're all different. And I think it's, in a way, it's good for us. It's a horrible thing to have around, but it's a reminder of how dependent we are on God, and how mysterious so many things still are. I think it's good to be baffled, and the reaction to this bafflement is not rejection, is not saying no, it doesn't exist, or even looking away, like there's some people who just, you know, you go down the street, you see somebody with mental illness, you just turn your eyes. And it's not fear. It should not be fear. Because even in a world that is corrupted and distorted by sin, we have an all-good, wise, and powerful God that has a definite plan. So, and one verse that is very good for this occasion, I think, is the Deuteronomy 29:29. This says that the things hidden belong to the Lord our God. So there are things that just we will never understand in this life. And then things that are revealed are for us and our children. Sometimes we use the first part of the verse to say, okay, there's a lot that we don't know and we have to accept it. But the second part is good, because it says things revealed are for us and our children. There's a lot revealed in the Bible. So we should be happy and focus on what has been revealed, what we know is true, which is everything we need for salvation. And the things that we don't understand, I think it's okay that we don't understand a lot of things. At least that's what I think. Okay, so I was actually finished with this. I don't know, do we want to have a break now, or is it too early? It's okay? Okay, and then I'll tell you about some lessons learned. How do you turn this off so I don't say something wrong?
Thank you, Simonetta, for your first talk. Much appreciated. We will go and have a break now. The schedule, I think, says that we'll be singing again at about 11:15. One of the things that I had forgot to mention is the little question box there. If you do have any questions that you'd like to write down, and we do have a question period at the end of today, and we'll do our best to read those questions out and seek answers for you. So the other thing I forgot to do this morning when we began was open with prayer. I'll ask for your forgiveness, and I'm going to pray for us right now, if that's all right. Father in heaven, how great thou art. Father, we thank you that we could assemble here as God-fearers with many questions, many sorrows, many concerns. And yet, Father, you have brought us here. You have given us this beautiful day. You have brought Simonetta into our midst, granted her safety in her travels. Father, we thank you for the first talk that could take place. We pray over this conference that we may continue to be built up in your love. Father, that we may continue to not only express our weaknesses before you, but to know that you are strong and that you have given all that we stand in need of, and particularly, Father, in our weaknesses, that the strength of Christ may abound in our hearts. Father, thank you for your grace and for your patience. Please bless us and keep us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. There's snacks and coffee out in the room there. You know where the bathrooms are, and any one of the committee members too, any questions or concerns you may have, don't hesitate to ask.